All right, now for the second technique, we are going to make our own pleating board using freezer paper. So in front of us right here, I have freezer paper and it's sitting on top of a cutting mat so you can see my grid lines through the paper. I have the paper side up. The shiny or waxy side is down. So I have this secured down with a few pieces of tape just to make sure that I draw consistent lines to create my template for all the pleating folds. Now when you create your board, you're going to want to think about what size pleats you want. So for the 18-inch items, for several of the different ones that we have 3/4 inch pleats. Once they are folded, it creates a 3/4 inch pleat. So for this diagram, these lines from fold line to fold line, which when they're folded would look like that. So that's the finished line of the pleats. Right here we have this, and that's 2 1/4 inches apart. It's a 3/4 inch fold underneath each pleat. So what I'm going to do first for this one is just draw my long lines for the front fold lines on this paper. And I'm going to do those 2 1/4 inches apart so that I have enough to go down a whole entire length of a skirt. Alright, so I have my first set of lines drawn, and this is just down a portion of the paper. I am going to go down about 40 inches and draw these lines so I have enough pleats to do an entire length of a skirt. So my second line, as I fold in, I'm going to want a 3/4 inch line in front of every straight line that I have right now. So I will just quickly go along both ends and mark 3/4 inch up from each line that I have right here to get my interior fold line. And if you were using 2 different color pens, or you wanted to mark these at the same time as you did your ones that were 2 1/4 with a 3/4 inside each one, 2 1/4, and then 3/4 inside those two, you could do that all at one time. Alright, so now I have a long row drawn, and you can see as I pull my paper, I have enough to do 17 3/4 inch pleats down the length of a piece of fabric. So now I'm going to work my way across, folding each one of these. So I'm going to fold one under and then one over until I fold all the way down. And the easiest way to do this straight is either with a long straight ruler or using the long edge of a table. So you can see here I have the edge of the table. And as I slide this down right here, and I can just begin to at least crease them right along that pencil line. And then I would flip it over so that I could crease it in the opposite direction on my second fold line. And this paper is light enough that as I'm creasing it, I can actually see my pencil line through to the other side. So I'm going to flip that back over, and then you can see that I can easily fold that pleat down. So then from the top side, I can press and crease this down as hard as I can. And this is where you're going to want to make sure that you see your line and you are folding and creasing right on that line. And then I'll continue to work my way down the entire paper. Now, as you can see, this is a little bit time consuming to crease down all these pleats. But once this is created, you will be able to use this over and over to create the same width pleats. All right, so now we have two separate templates. One I'm going to create a permanent pleated template, and the other I'm going to use as a flat template on the fabric before it's pleated. So I'm going to set this one aside, and then we're going to finish creating this pleat board. Okay, for this next step, I have this piece of glass here that I can press on. You can also do this on an ironing board, but I like this because it's actually really firm. So I have the template now upside down. So you can see here that this is the shiny side or the waxy side. I have it paper side down, and I have just a piece of woven cotton. This is like quilting cotton, and I'm going to use this to back this to keep it permanently pleated. Now, another thing that you can do, this is sticky and will adhere to this when we press it, but you could also spray this with a spray adhesive to provide an extra layer of permanent adhesive on the back side before you press it. So I'm just going to carefully set this on top, being sure that my pleats are still pressed underneath, and I'm going to adhere this to the paper. And then we can check to make sure that we are pressing that nicely, but you can see our pleats then are still free to be formed on this front side, but for the back side, it's holding it all together. Then we'll go ahead and flip that over, and you can see here that we have all of the pleats open. So all of the pleats lift up and they are pressed together now, so they're nice and secure, and they're secure to this fabric. Then we can go ahead, since this is the paper side, and press this from the top as well. Just to be sure that we have that down, and the paper is secured to itself on every pleat. All the way down. Then I'm just going to go ahead and trim this off. And we will trim off all the excess fabric. All right, so here we have this board complete, and I have a strip of fabric. This is cut the length of the pleated skirt for the 18-inch doll, and these are the 3/4 inch pleats. So I'm just going to set this right in here. I have a 1/4 inch past my first pleat line, and then what I'm going to do is just set this in and fold it, being sure to keep it secure inside every single pleat. So I'll push it all the way back down and hold it down, push it down, and I'm holding as I'm tucking these under, and this goes down the entire length of the strip of fabric. So here I'm creating all of these 3/4 inch pleats. And a good way to know if you are getting them securely inside every one is if your strip is continuing to stay straight. If it starts to go crooked, you'll know that you don't have it pressed down evenly inside one of these pleats. So I have a good portion of them in, and I'm just going to go ahead and press them down. And as long as it's not too hot for me to touch, then I'm just going to continue, and that just helps me to make sure that they're secure. If you can hold the whole thing all at one time, then you can just push the whole thing into the board and then press it all at the very end. And here we have a whole row. So now if I just slide these out, then this is all pleated, and I could go and take this over to my machine and then just baste all of these pleats down. So I'm going to set them all back on here, and you can see that that is all pleated all the way across. And then I'll just bring in that first one that we had done on the machine with the technique of the pins, and you can see that if I set this down right underneath it, we have a row that is the exact same dimension. So there is the pleating board method that once this is put together, it's much faster than going through and pleating these one at a time on the machine. So it just depends on your preference. This works great for a variety of different styles of pleats. Now, one other quick example of the knife pleats are when they come back and meet each other at the center point of the design. So this is the Piccadilly Peacoat, and at the center back they fold in towards each other. So the knife pleats are coming in towards the center from both directions. So if you wanted to use your pleating board for something like that, you could mark the center of your fabric, and then you could put your pleats in so that they fold up to that marking point. So say this is center back right here. And we were gonna press our pleats on this side, and this piece of fabric is a little bit too short, but this is just a quick example to show you. So you couldn't use the board right now, but what you could do is then take it out, flip it around, and then set this one in so that it lines up exactly with your other center pleat. And it might take you just a little bit of trial and error to make sure that you have this in exactly the right place. So here we have the pleats on this side that are coming in this direction right to the center, and then I have another row here that I can press back, and then I could use the board to press my pleats. These are also 3/4 inch pleats in this Piccadilly Peacoat design. So we have it then pressed down, and you can take that out, and then you would have your piece ready to go. So for that particular design, the piece is a little bit longer, but you can see here how they would meet at the center, and then you could have them extending outward to the side seams. So you'd go ahead and just then pin that down, and you could base that into your design. So that's just a quick example of the versatility of the pleating board once you have it formed. So again, this one is for 3/4 inch pleats. I would make a second one that is for 1/2 inch pleats that I could use for designs that are either for smaller dolls or just a smaller pleat width. Now the second method with the other half that I had cut that I wanted to demonstrate is if you simply wanted to take your freezer paper or your pattern piece and print it on freezer paper and have it be flat. So don't crease the lines first, or if you've already creased the lines, then you'll just want to press it flat as you adhere it to the fabric. So I'm going to turn this one over. It is shiny or waxy side up, and I have again a strip of fabric cut for the length of a skirt. So it's as long as I need to create all the pleats. Now I'm just going to place the fabric right on this, and I'm going to press this down. So that it adheres flat. All right, so once you have that attached, and you could have this be the exact pattern piece. If you had your pattern piece cut out, it doesn't have to be bigger than the fabric, but I do have that pressed down to make the fabric flat. So we have not created the pleating board, but we do have the lines drawn on it. So then we can simply just work our way through and fold this with all the lines folding and lining up on top of each other. So you do still have to go in and mark all your lines. But this creates a grid for you to press all of your pleats on. Now this could work really well if you were doing a design that had inconsistent pleating. So maybe it had pleating lines drawn to go in one direction and then you drew your lines on the other side so that it could fold in the opposite direction. Or again, you printed your pattern piece directly on the freezer paper. So then you would just go in and press this down, all of that pleated together. So you have the freezer paper and the fabric being pressed all together at the same time. And you can do that from the top side as well. Just be careful if you have the excess freezer paper that you are not ironing over it, that you have a pressing cloth or something to cover it. So then all of your pleats are now pressed in here, and then you would just come in and you would peel off this fabric, and then you would just fold them all back in place. But they are all pre-pressed, so as you carefully just fold them all back down on top of each other. You would have, again, a full row of even pleats, and you could just come down and just press them down at the end just to give a final press, and then you could baste them down just as you did the other types of pleats. Then if this was an existing pattern piece, you could simply press it flat again on another piece of fabric and then just peel that fabric off and it would be flat and ready to go for the next time that you want to do it. So it just depends on your preference. If you like to have the pleats already formed and you just want to tuck your fabric in, that method works great for that. And then this one works great if you maybe have some little bit different shaped pattern pieces and you would like to use that to create your pleating technique. All right, well, I hope that these tips and techniques will help you to consistently add pleats to the garments and projects that you're working on.